Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about something that I've been looking forward to making for a while. We are going to break down isolytic damage. We're going to explain what isolytic damage is, how it's calculated. We're going to also explain how Isolytic Cascade works as well. We're going to show you all the different sources. I'm going to show you a couple of tools that just demonstrate this really easy, one from Jules Verne and one made by Silvus as well. Just to demonstrate exactly how isolytic damage works, we have events that specialise in isolytic damage this month of the creation of this video, but we are going to dive into this, understand exactly what isolytic damage is, where to get that from, and understand how it's calculated as well, because I think a lot of people don't understand exactly how it works. They just look at the battle log and see that it is just there. They know that there's researchers, officers, etc., but how is it actually calculated? We're going to break that down today so everybody actually fully understands how isolytic damage and Isolytic Cascade actually works. Let's do this. So, best place for us to start with this, we are just going to talk about damage. We're going to really quickly just explain the basic mechanics for this. This will be sucking eggs for some people, but again, just really briefly, just to remind ourselves. So, when we look at my Sanctus shot here, we can see that I dealt 9.789 million worth of standard damage. I dealt 11.219 million of isolytic damage, okay, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. But then just a reminder that obviously standard damage then goes across to the other side where it is mitigated based on the enemy's mitigation stats, and then obviously the damage is then split between shield and hull at 80%. That's how the normal damage works. In terms of isolytic that we're talking about, so this 11.219 million, what that does is that comes across here. It is not affected by standard mitigation, so this is not included within this mitigation figure. However, it is still impacted by the 80-20 split, or if you have certain researches which can affect this, could be why these figures don't always add up. So one thing to point out is there are researches, and the quick ones to just remind us of, shield mitigation officers such as Pike can affect these numbers when you look at them, but there are researches as well that affect this. So for example, if you go into your combat tree, and if we look at the section where like super highways are, which I know are for G5 players, but it's just an easy way to demonstrate this. If we look at the KSG shield mitigation, increases the base shield mitigation for the first 2 rounds of combat, and mine's at 2.5%, so that would change it from 80-20, change it up to 82-17.5 to hull for damage being received to me, for example. So it's just giving you basically an idea of the fact that you can affect the 80-20 as well. There are certain officers that do that as well. But what I want to talk about today specifically is isolytic damage. So isolytic damage comes in a variety of forms, and obviously some of the main ones to do this are going to be artifacts. That's how it was released to start with. So over in our artifacts building, which we will just really quickly speed up and then dive into the artifact gallery. 1 second. Here we go, and just to give you an example, we can sort this now by isolytic, which means we can then tick on one at the top, which is going to be an isolytic, my Blade of Tacon, which is level 19, which is increasing isolytic damage on an interceptor when the opponent has hull breach, and that's giving me a 7.8% isolytic damage bonus. I'm not going to go through every single source of isolytic damage. I'm going to show you a handy chart that's going to do that for you towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But what I want to talk about today is how is isolytic damage actually calculated. So we're going to show you a really crude chart that, I'm calling it crude, Silvus will kill me, a less complex chart just to basically demonstrate the initial points. That's the first thing that I'm going to show you, created by the one, the only Silvus, so massive shout out to Silvus for this. But let's just have a look at this, and this might help us actually explain how isolytic damage is calculated. Okay, so here we go. So what this chart's telling us is basically it's allowing us to type in numbers of how much we have isolytic damage bonuses. What do we have? So what do we have from primes? What do we have from artifacts, for example? And I'll give you some examples of obviously what the primes look like and different artifacts that affect it, as I have just shown you before. You can then add in here your total number of isolytic cascade percentage points that you've got from mainly officers, okay, and then how that can convert into your isolytic damage percentage that you will get as a total. So you can imagine here, if it was a 1,000 point shot in this example, then you will be getting 1,000 as like standard damage. That will be your standard damage. And then you'll be getting 42.6% of that. So 426 points would be isolytic damage as the way it's hit. Because the way that isolytic damage is worked is it's not a flat figure like what damage is, where it works off your weapons. This works off whatever the standard shot actually is. So if we go back into our battle log and we pull up that same battle log that we was looking at before, or a similar one, and we look at those shots from our Sanctus. So we're looking at this, and we can see here that my standard shot was 9.419 million. Okay, 9.419 million. And then the isolytic damage that I did was 10,794, which means that I'm actually doing more in isolytic damage than what I am in standard damage. Now, that's because of research. I've gone heavy into artifacts, the isolytic artifacts, which everybody should be doing. And another thing to note is that these are affected by criticals. Whatever is on that top line, whether it be a standard shot, whether it be a critical shot, whether it be impacted by hull breach, all of that number, that top number, is taken into account when converting to isolytic, which is absolutely huge. So what this means is that my isolytic damage bonus, now I don't expect everybody to have this. I don't expect everybody to have this level of isolytic damage if it's not something that you've been focused on, especially if you are a lower level player. You might not have ever wondered what isolytic damage even is, or it's never really been necessary to you because you're still using the likes of Pike Moreau Chen to grind things. And sometimes with crews like that, it wasn't necessary for this sort of stuff to be taken into account. But now that it is necessary to be taken into account, for example, the Borg, and obviously forever ever increasing, obviously PvP events and things where you want to be getting that upper edge, isolytic damage is so important. And my isolytic damage for this particular battle, we've looked at the numbers here in this calculator, so 10,794,000. So this shot here, I'm actually getting 114.5% isolytic damage, or 114.6%. Isolytic damage. That is what my isolytic bonus is currently, and obviously that will be steady across all of the different shots. Okay, so it's absolutely huge isolytic damage, and it can make such a significant impact. Before this was actually introduced, obviously, then you've got to imagine that if I was attacking this hostile, that's a full 129,000 that, remember, is not getting mitigated due to standard mitigation. Yes, it's affected by the 80-20 split, but it's so much more damage getting through to the hostile, getting through to the player, getting through to whatever enemy that you are currently attacking. So it's so important to consider it. But if we dive back into Silvus's chart, we can play with these numbers and obviously say that obviously if we've got, let's say I've got 50% worth of this and my Isolytic Cascade is actually 40% worth of this, it's getting me somewhere close. Let's change back to 35. 114.8, that's as close as, damn it, as what it could have been, obviously, to get to the figure that I worked out. That's actually surprisingly close. I'm quite impressed with that, just from guessing some random numbers. Anyway, I digress. So 114%, we can see how that's actually impacted by, obviously, changing these figures. But what I want you to do, I want people to understand, what does Cascade do? Isolytic damage is relatively straightforward. It's basically a percentage of your existing damage, your basic damage, whether that be critical, standard, hull breach, whatever. Isolytic damage is just a percentage of that number. Isolytic Cascade is a little bit different, okay? So Isolytic Cascade is both additive and multiplicative, okay? So it's massive, massive bonus. So this is the why we have to separate these. So let's say you look at an officer that just provides isolytic damage. Not an officer, sorry, I mean an artifact. So if we look at the Blade of Tacon, for example, it's giving us isolytic damage on an interceptor, opponent has hull breach. So yes, it's situational, but obviously this is just an isolytic damage add. So this is adding to, when we reference the charts that we were looking at, when we look at the charts, this is basically getting it added into this top bucket. When we look at the Isolytic Cascade, this comes from officers. So officers that we've picked out here being Janeway, 7 of 9, Enterprise E Data, Enterprise E Picard. Obviously they have these as officer abilities, and these are so potent. I'm going to explain to you what impact the Isolytic Cascade actually has on your isolytic damage. So when we look at the different officers, now my Enterprise E Data is actually maxed, and this is why Enterprise E Data was such a huge push that everybody should have really pushed for. Because we look at him at level 30, he's not giving us an isolytic damage bonus, he's giving us an Isolytic Cascade bonus. 40% versus non-Armada hostile, so basically red triangles. 40% Isolytic Cascade. Now, what does that Isolytic Cascade do? So Isolytic Cascade, if we go back to our chart, Isolytic Cascade obviously will be added into the bottom number in terms of the calculation. But Isolytic Damage is actually added first onto this number. So it's actually added first onto this number at the top, but then that number is then multiplied, okay? So in order for these numbers to work out, what you would do, in essence, is you would take your Isolytic Cascade number. This is how to get your total Isolytic damage percentage. You would take this 35% Isolytic Cascade and you would then add it to all of your standard Isolytic damage increasing artifacts and researches, which basically takes us up to 85%. But here is the power of Isolytic Cascade. If we take that 85, we go back to our handy-dandy calculator here. So if we add these two together, it's a cascade. So we add the 35 to the 50. That takes us up to 85. We then add an additional 35% to it, okay, as a percentage. Okay, so basically we take 50 and 35 and we would then, so that gives us obviously the 85, so we're adding it together, and then we are also adding 35% to that. So 85 plus 35%, which is 29.75, adding that together, and that gives us a total of 114.75% Isolytic. So it is multiplicative by that amount, plus it is additive to that amount. That is why Cascade is so important. It is so vital, especially against the Gorn. Obviously, the Gorn hostiles, they only take Isolytic damage, so making sure you are maximising your Isolytic damage, officers, artifacts, all that sort of stuff, and working with all that sort of thing is so important. However, just in general gameplay against everything, this makes a massive difference to your game. So understanding how Isolytic damage works, which I hope I've explained there to you, is so important. We have actually got a couple of graphics that we're going to show you. See if anybody wants to screen grab any of these, then we can do them. So I'll pull them up now. So this chart, which was originally put together by Scopely when Isolytic damage was introduced, we can see here, if we look at this at the top, this is Isolytic damage. Obviously, we can look here, the Isolytic damage comes, it stays this big, huge orange bar all the way through standard mitigation. All the way through standard mitigation because it's not impacted by it. It is impacted by Isolytic mitigation in a similar way to what standard mitigation is for normal damage. So obviously that can then be reduced. And then obviously if you do have Isolytic defense on hostiles, or if you're fighting against players that have Isolytic defense officers or Isolytic defense researchers, etc. So that can be affected by that. So it can reduce there. And then obviously it is then split 80-20 between shield and hull. Once your shield is fully depleted, 100% will then go to hull from that point. Compared to standard damage, which is the bottom red image, obviously when that hits standard mitigation, we can see that the red bar gets smaller, so the amount of damage gets smaller in standard damage. It's not impacted by Isolytic damage, so it doesn't change, Isolytic defense. That's why it's not reduced at this section. And again, we've then got the shield and hull split, the 80-20, exactly the same. So a nice little graphic there if anyone wants to take screen grabs of that. Obviously, just as a bit of a demonstration to your alliance, that's obviously a really good image that shows off exactly how Isolytic damage works on top of my hopefully quite clear explanation. Okay, so I hope that explained the nitty-gritty on how Isolytic works and give you a couple of graphics and visuals as to how all that sort of stuff goes. Now, I did say that I would tell you everywhere that you can get different Isolytic damages. So I'm going to pull up a chart which is available in our Discord. So if you're not a member of our Discord, please join it. Link to that is in the description down below. And please drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. Let me see what do you think of Isolytic damage? Did you understand it before? Do you understand it better now? Is it different to how you thought it actually worked? Or has this added any additional clarity for you? I hope this has been really helpful. But if we dive into the chart, I might even leave that in. If we dive into the chart created by Jules Man, Blue Mandalorian, and the rest of his team, we can see every single source of Isolytic damage currently in the game. So it is called Isolytic Damage Research Sheet, and we can see here on the ISO Calculator tab, down the right-hand side here, all the Isolytic factors in game that help affect it. You can adjust this for you, and then you can get all of your results on the left-hand side as well. So you can put in your situation, whether you're attacking players or hostiles or armadas, your ship type, whether it's a subtype, if it's a specific faction ship or anything like that, or if it's the Mona Veen, you can put your bridge crews in there to calculate it all, and then you can input all of your data on the right hand side of here for all the artifacts, obviously all of your respective officer levels, and this is up to date up to this month. It does include Chapel in there as well. Chapel is an outstanding officer. I mentioned this in the event guide video, so if anybody's thinking that there's a hell of a lot of events going on, I do break down all of the events in the previous video that I released a day or so ago. So please check that out and share that with your team so that you're not caught out, because there are things that you need to save for in April of 2024. However, Chapel is so essential. If you're watching this in 3 months' time, you're watching this in August, September, October of 2024, or you're even watching it in 2025 later on, if you see shards of Chapel, I'm telling you now, will still be relevant even whenever you watch this video. So you should be going for Chapel because she has fantastic Isolytic Cascade and she has it as a below deck ability, and that's why I think she is so good. So this chart, absolutely marvellous for calculating your own individual, but I hope I've explained that well to everybody, and I hope it now makes a little bit more sense as to what Isolytic Damage is, how it's calculated, and how it actually works. If you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments below. Check us out on Discord if you want any more information, or if you want access to any of these charts. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already, and press the like button as well. You won't believe how much that helps with all of the respective YouTube algorithms and all that sort of thing. Check out itslube.com where you can get access to all of our merch and become a member of the channel, so you can join the YouTube channel down below at the join button, or you can join us over on itslube.com as well and become a member of the overall production team here at itslube.com. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure, and if you need anything, you know where we are. But remember guys, that everything is better with lube. Take care and have a wonderful day.